She walked into the courtroom like she owned it. Designer sunglasses still perched on her head, Chanel bag swinging from her perfectly manicured hand. And she had absolutely no idea that the next 15 minutes would destroy everything she thought she knew about power. But before we get to the moment that made Judge Caprio a legend, hit that subscribe button, because what happens next will restore your faith in justice. And drop a comment right now telling us, have you ever witnessed entitled behavior get shut down in real life? Her name was Madison Ashford, 23 years old. Daddy's little princess, who'd never heard the word no without a credit card making it disappear. She stood there in that Providence, Rhode Island courtroom on a Tuesday morning in March, checking her phone like the entire legal system was just another inconvenience, like traffic on the way to her Pilates class. Judge Frank Caprio watched her, that gentle Italian grandfather who'd seen everything in his 40-plus years on the bench. The man who'd go viral 100 times over for his compassion, for paying people's parking tickets when they couldn't afford them, for seeing the humanity in everyone who stood before him. But something about Madison Ashford's entrance made his eyebrows raise just slightly. The way she sighed, the way she rolled her eyes at the bailiff, who asked her to silence her phone. Case number 2847, the clerk announced. City of Providence versus Madison Ashford. Reckless driving, leaving the scene of an accident, and failure to render aid. Madison finally looked up from her phone. "This is ridiculous," she muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I have a spa appointment at 11. If you're already feeling that justice needs to be served here, smash that like button. Because what Judge Caprio does next is exactly why millions of people call him America's favorite judge. The prosecutor stood. A tired-looking woman named Sarah Chen, who'd been handling traffic court for 6 years. She'd seen plenty of entitled defendants, but something about this case had kept her up the night before. "Your Honor, on February 14th of this year, at approximately 9:15 p.m., the defendant was driving her vehicle, a 2024 Mercedes G-Wagon, southbound on Hope Street near the intersection of 4th. Madison examined her nails. French tips. Probably cost more than most people's grocery bill. According to multiple witnesses and surveillance footage from nearby businesses, the defendant was traveling at excessive speed, ran a red light, and struck a vehicle making a legal left turn." Sarah Chen's voice got quieter. That vehicle was a 2008 Honda Civic driven by Teresa Martinez, a 52-year-old nurse at Rhode Island Hospital who was on her way home after a double shift. Judge Caprio leaned forward. Madison still hadn't looked up. The impact sent Mrs. Martinez's vehicle into a utility pole. The defendant then allegedly fled the scene without stopping to check on the victim or call for emergency services. Sarah paused. Mrs. Repote, Martinez suffered 3 broken ribs, a fractured collarbone, severe whiplash, and a traumatic brain injury. She spent 4 days in the ICU. The same ICU where she'd just finished working a 16-hour shift saving other people's lives. Now Madison looked up, not with concern, with annoyance. "That's not even my fault. She should have seen me coming." The courtroom went dead silent. Even the clerk stopped typing. Judge Caprio removed his glasses slowly, cleaning them with the deliberate patience of a man choosing his words very carefully. Share this video with someone who needs to remember that consequences are real, because what's about to unfold is the most satisfying moment of justice you'll see all week. "Ms. Ashford," Judge Caprio said, his voice still gentle but carrying an edge now, "do you understand the charges being brought against you?" Quote. Madison shrugged. "I understand this is a huge waste of my time. Do you know who my father is?" Quote. There it was, the phrase that would become the most replayed moment of the video. 4 security cameras captured it from different angles. 16 people in the courtroom heard it clearly. And Judge Caprio's expression, that subtle shift from grandfatherly patience to steel-eyed justice, would become a screenshot shared across every social media platform within 24 hours. "Why don't you tell me," Judge Caprio said quietly, "who your father is?" Madison smiled. The kind of smile that had gotten her out of every speeding ticket, every college disciplinary hearing, every moment of accountability in her entire life. Richard Ashford, Ashford Capital Management, He manages over $3 billion in assets. He plays golf with the governor. He's friends with the police commissioner. She tilted her head, and he's going to be really unhappy when I tell him how I've been treated here today. I see, Judge Caprio said. He looked at the prosecutor. Ms. Chen, is Mrs. Martinez here today? Quote, She is, Your Honor. She had to take unpaid leave from work to attend. She's still undergoing physical therapy twice a week. I'd like to hear from her. Quote, A woman stood from the gallery, early 50s like the prosecutor had said, but she moved like someone much older. Every motion careful, guarded, like her body had learned not to trust sudden movements anymore. She wore scrubs under a cardigan. Her face was kind but exhausted, with the particular exhaustion that comes from chronic pain mixing with financial stress. If you believe people like Teresa deserve justice, hit that like button right now. Teresa Martinez walked slowly to the witness stand, and Madison Ashford watched her with a kind of bored disdain usually reserved for watching paint dry. She actually checked her phone again. The bailiff had to ask her twice to put it away. Mrs. Martinez, Judge Caprio said gently, Thank you for being here. I know this isn't easy. Can you tell us about that night? Quote, Teresa's hand shook slightly as she gripped the edge of the witness stand. I had just finished my shift. It was Valentine's Day, so I had stayed late because we were short-staffed, and there was a car accident, ironically, that brought in multiple patients. Her voice was soft, accented, steady despite the trembling hands. I was tired. I just wanted to get home to my family. My daughter, Emma, she's 16. She'd made dinner for me and her little brother because I'd been working so much. Quote, Madison yawned, actually yawned. Visible to everyone. Teresa saw it. She paused, something flickering across her face, hurt mixing with resignation. The look of someone used to being invisible to people like Madison Ashford. Please continue, Judge Caprio said, and there was something in his tone that made Madison finally stop looking at her phone. I was at the intersection. The light was green for me to turn left. I looked both ways, the way you do, the way they teach you, the way I've done thousands of times. Teresa's voice cracked slightly. I started my turn, and then there were lights, so bright, and the sound of an engine, and I remember thinking, this is how my patients feel. This is what it's like right before, and then impact, and glass, and then nothing. You lost consciousness, Judge Caprio said softly. I woke up in my own ER. My coworker Jennifer was the one starting my IV line. I could see she was crying. Carlos, one of our residents, he was checking my pupils and his hands were shaking because we'd just shared lunch 4 hours earlier. Teresa wiped her eyes. The first thing I asked was if the other driver was okay. Because that's what you do. That's what decent people do. You check on each other. Quote, Drop a comment telling us about a time someone showed you compassion when you needed it most. And what did you learn about the other driver? Judge Caprio asked. That she never stopped. That someone at a gas station 2 blocks away had to call 911 because they heard the crash. That I sat there in my crushed car for 8 minutes before paramedics arrived, and she never even slowed down. Teresa looked directly at Madison now. I have a traumatic brain injury. I have memory problems now. I forget words sometimes, in the middle of sentences. I'm a nurse. I need my mind sharp. I need to remember medication dosages and protocols and patient histories. And now I second-guess everything, because sometimes I reach for a word and it's just gone. Madison shifted uncomfortably, the first crack in her armor. My daughter Emma. She's the one who helped me learn my own phone number again. My son Marcus, he's 12. He writes me reminder notes for everything now and leaves them around the house. My husband Jorge, he took a second job because I can only work part-time now, and the medical bills are drowning us. Teresa's voice got stronger. But none of that matters to you, does it? Because I'm just someone in your way, someone who should have seen you coming. The courtroom was so quiet you could hear the heating system click on. Your Honor, Madison's attorney finally spoke up. A slick-looking man named Bradley Whitmore from some downtown firm with marble floors and hourly rates that could feed a family for a week. My client is very sorry for Mrs. Martinez's injuries, But the police report is inconclusive about speed, and there were no functional traffic cameras at that specific intersection, so we're relying entirely on witness statements which are notoriously unreliable. Is that right? Judge Caprio said. It wasn't a question. Furthermore, my client has no prior record. She's a recent college graduate, and this incident, while unfortunate, shouldn't derail her entire future over what was essentially a traffic accident. Essentially a traffic accident, Judge Caprio repeated slowly. Ms. Chen, you mentioned surveillance footage, quote. The prosecutor nodded. Not from a traffic camera, Your Honor, but from 3 businesses along Hope Street. We've compiled the footage. With the court's permission, quote. Judge Caprio nodded. The bailiff dimmed the lights slightly and pulled up the video on the courtroom's display screens. If you're ready to see the evidence that changes everything, make sure you're subscribed, because cases like this prove why the truth always comes out eventually. The first clip showed a residential street. Date and timestamp, February 14th, 9:14 p.m. A white Mercedes G-Wagon visible in the distance, moving fast. Too fast. You could tell, even from the grainy footage, that this wasn't normal urban driving. The second clip, from a coffee shop's exterior camera, showed the same vehicle blow through an intersection. The light was clearly red. Unmistakably red. The Mercedes didn't even slow down. The third clip was from a convenience store, directly across from the intersection, where the accident occurred. And this one showed everything. The Honda Civic entering the intersection carefully, turn signal blinking, the green arrow clearly visible on the traffic light, and then the Mercedes, flying through the frame at a speed that made several people in the courtroom gasp, slamming into the Honda's passenger side with such force that the smaller car spun a full rotation before crumpling against the utility pole. The impact was silent in the footage, but everyone watching could imagine the sound, the terrible, final sound of metal and glass, and a life changing forever. And then the Mercedes, after a brief pause, its front end clearly damaged, backing up, turning, and driving away. Jesus, someone whispered in the gallery. Madison Ashford had gone pale. All that practiced confidence draining from her face like water from a broken glass. Miss Chen, Judge Caprio said, his voice harder now, do you have speed analysis? Quote. We do, Your Honor. Based on the footage and the accident reconstruction report, the defendant was traveling between 65 and 70 miles per hour in a 30-mile-per-hour zone. More than double the speed limit. Yes, Your Honor. Judge Caprio turned to Madison. Ms. Ashford, I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I want you to understand that how you answer will matter significantly. Did you know you'd hit another vehicle? Quote. Madison's attorney started to speak. Your Honor, I don't think. I'm asking your client, Mr. Whitmore. Ms. Ashford, did you know? Quote. Madison's mouth opened, closed. Her hands, those perfectly manicured hands that had been so casually dismissive earlier, now twisted together in her lap. There was a noise, a thump, but I thought maybe I hit a pothole or something. A pothole, Judge Caprio said flatly. I was on my phone. My boyfriend was texting me, and we were fighting, and I was upset, and I just wanted to get home. The words came faster now, defensive, desperate. I didn't mean to hit anyone. I didn't know it was that bad. My airbag didn't even deploy. You were on your phone. Just reading texts. Not like actively typing. Comment below if you think distracted driving should have the same penalties as drunk driving, because this is exactly why laws exist. Ms. Ashford, let me make sure I understand correctly. Judge Caprio's voice was still measured, but there was something building beneath it, like thunder you feel before you hear. You were driving more than double the speed limit in a vehicle weighing approximately 5,000 pounds while reading text messages from your boyfriend, and when you felt significant impact to your vehicle, your first thought was that you'd hit a pothole. I was upset. And rather than stop to investigate what you'd hit, even when you must have seen in your mirrors that there was an accident behind you, you continued driving. I was scared, I panicked. You were scared, Judge Caprio repeated. Mrs. Martinez, when you regained consciousness in your vehicle, were you scared? Quote. Teresa nodded, tears running freely now. I couldn't feel my left arm. There was blood in my eyes from a cut on my forehead. I could smell gasoline, and I was trapped. The door was crushed shut. How long before help arrived? Quote, 8 minutes. I know because I kept looking at the clock on my dashboard. It was cracked, but still working. Every minute felt like an hour. Judge Caprio looked back at Madison. You were scared, so you drove home, Mrs. Martinez was scared, so she sat trapped in a crushed vehicle, bleeding, wondering if she would die before help arrived, while you were safely in your apartment texting your boyfriend back. Madison was crying now too, but they were different tears. Not the tears of someone in pain, but the tears of someone finally understanding that actions have consequences. That Daddy's money and Daddy's connections and Daddy's name might not fix this. Your Honor, Bradley Whitmore tried again. My client is clearly remorseful. Is she? Judge Caprio turned his full attention to the attorney. Mr. Whitmore, when your client walked into this courtroom today, did she seem remorseful? When she asked if I knew who her father was that remorse? When she yawned while Mrs. Martinez described her traumatic brain injury, was that remorse? Quote, Whitmore had no answer. Let me tell you what I see, Mr. Whitmore. I see a young woman who has never faced a real consequence in her entire life. I see someone who believes that rules are for other people. Someone who thinks that wealth and connections and designer handbags are a shield against responsibility. Judge Caprio's voice rose slightly. And I see someone who, if I let her walk out of here with a fine and suspended license, will learn absolutely nothing from this experience except that she was right all along. Share this with anyone who thinks the justice system needs more judges like Frank Caprio. Your Honor, please, Madison started. I'm not finished. Judge Caprio held up a hand. Ms. Chen, what is the full extent of Mrs. Martinez's injuries? Quote, the prosecutor consulted her notes. 3 fractured ribs, fractured collarbone, grade 2 concussion with ongoing post-concussion syndrome, cervical spine strain, multiple lacerations requiring stitches, and traumatic brain injury resulting in short-term memory impairment and word-finding difficulties. Her neurologist says the cognitive symptoms may be permanent. Medical costs? Quote, over $200,000 so far. Her insurance has covered some, but she's facing approximately $75,000 in out-of-pocket expenses. She's had to reduce her hours at work, resulting in lost income of approximately $3,000 per month. She'll require ongoing physical therapy, cognitive therapy, and neurological monitoring indefinitely. Judge Caprio turned to Madison. How much is your car worth, Ms. Ashford? Quote, what? Quote, your Mercedes G-Wagon, how much did it cost? Quote, like $140,000, but my dad bought it, so I don't. Your car costs more than Mrs. Martinez makes in 3 years as a nurse. Judge Caprio let that sink in. The watch on your wrist right now, is that a Cartier? Quote, Madison looked down at her wrist like she'd forgotten she was wearing it. Yes. That watch costs more than Mrs. Martinez's car did when she bought it used 6 years ago. He paused. Do you understand what I'm illustrating here? Quote, that I have money? Madison's voice was small now, all the earlier arrogance gone. That you have no concept of value, no understanding of what your actions cost other people. Judge Caprio removed his glasses again, rubbing the bridge of his nose like a man exhausted by the weight of what he was about to do. Ms. Ashford, I've been on this bench for over 40 years. I've seen thousands of cases. Thousands of people who made mistakes, who showed poor judgment, who hurt others. And most of them walk in here with at least a basic understanding that what they did was wrong. He looked at her steadily. You walked in here like you were doing me a favor by showing up. Like Mrs. Martinez was an inconvenience. Like justice was just another appointment you could reschedule if it conflicted with your spa day. Hit that subscribe button if you believe every single word Judge Caprio is saying right now. I'm sorry, Madison whispered. I really am sorry. Are you sorry you did it, or are you sorry you got caught? Judge Caprio asked. Are you sorry Mrs. Martinez is suffering, or are you sorry you're uncomfortable right now? Quote. Madison didn't answer, couldn't answer, because the truth was probably somewhere in the middle, and they both knew it. Let me tell you what's going to happen, Judge Caprio said. First, on the charge of reckless driving, I'm finding you guilty. Second, On the charge of leaving the scene of an accident, guilty. Third, on the charge of failure to render aid, guilty. Each word landed like a gavel strike. Madison's attorney scribbled notes frantically. Your license is suspended for 18 months, effective immediately. When that suspension ends, you will be required to complete a 40-hour driver safety course, a victim impact program, and 100 hours of community service at Rhode Island Hospital, specifically in the emergency department. Madison's eyes went wide. Your Honor, please, I need my car. I have things. You have legs. You have access to public transportation. You have the same options Mrs. Martinez had while she was recovering and couldn't drive for 3 months. Judge Caprio's tone left no room for argument. Additionally, you will pay restitution to Mrs. Martinez in the amount of $75,000 for her medical expenses. $75,000. Madison looked at her attorney desperately. Furthermore, you will pay a fine of $10,000 to the court, and you will serve 90 days in the adult correctional facility. The courtroom erupted. Madison's attorney jumped to his feet. Your Honor, with all respect, jail time for a first offense. Sit down, Mr. Whitmore. Judge Caprio's voice cut through the noise. This isn't a first offense in spirit. It's just the first time your client has been held accountable. There's a difference. Your Honor, my client is a young woman with her whole life ahead of her. A jail sentence could derail her future. Do you know what else derails futures, Mr. Whitmore? Judge Caprio leaned forward. Traumatic brain injuries, being unable to remember your own phone number, having your 16-year-old daughter teach you basic tasks again, working 2 jobs to pay medical bills because someone decided their text messages were more important than your life. Quote. The attorney sat back down. Comment right now telling us what you think would be a fair sentence, because what happens next might surprise you. Judge Caprio looked at Madison, who was sobbing openly now, her whole body shaking. Miss Ashford, I want you to understand something. I don't enjoy this. I don't take pleasure in seeing you cry. I've built a reputation on compassion, on seeing the good in people, on giving second chances. Do you know why? Quote. Madison shook her head, unable to speak. Because most people who come before me are genuinely struggling. They're poor, they're overwhelmed, they made a mistake because they were desperate or scared or just trying to survive another day. Those people deserve compassion. Those people deserve second chances. He paused. You had every advantage, every opportunity, every resource. And you chose to be reckless anyway. You chose to value your convenience over someone else's safety. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. I'll do better, Madison managed to say. I swear, I'll be better. Will you, or will you just be more careful not to get caught? Judge Caprio shook his head. That's what we're about to find out. Quote, please, I can't go to jail. I'll lose my job, my apartment, everything. Mrs. Martinez nearly lost her life. She did lose her health, her peace of mind, her financial security. She lost the ability to trust her own mind. Judge Caprio's voice softened slightly. And yet she's not asking me to destroy you. She's not asking for vengeance. She's asking for accountability. There's a difference. He looked at Teresa. Mrs. Martinez, you have the right to make a statement before I finalize sentencing. Is there anything you'd like to say? Quote. Teresa stood slowly. She looked at Madison for a long moment. Everyone in the courtroom held their breath, waiting to see what a woman who'd suffered so much would say to the person who'd caused it all. I forgive you, Teresa said quietly. Madison's head snapped up. I forgive you, because holding on to anger would only hurt me more. It wouldn't undo what happened. It wouldn't give me back what I lost. Teresa's voice was steady now, clear. But forgiveness doesn't mean there shouldn't be consequences. My daughter Emma, she asked me what I was going to say today. She's 16 and she's watching how the world works. She's learning whether actions matter or if money and connections can erase anything. Quote, Teresa looked at Judge Caprio. Whatever you decide, Your Honor, I trust it will be just, but I hope it will also be educational. Because maybe if Ms. Ashford learns something real from this, maybe one day she'll be the kind of person who stops to help instead of driving away. If that didn't give you chills, watch it again and make sure you hit that like button. Judge Caprio nodded slowly. Mrs. Martinez, your grace is remarkable. Ms. Ashford, I hope you heard what just happened. I hope you understand what real strength looks like." He took a breath. "Here's what I'm going to do. The 90-day jail sentence stands, but I'm suspending 60 days of it. You'll serve 30 days, and the remaining 60 will be suspended, provided you complete all the other requirements I've outlined without incident." 30 days, Madison whispered. It wasn't relief in her voice, it was terror. "You'll report to the facility on Monday at 8 a.m. You'll surrender yourself voluntarily. If you fail to appear, a warrant will be issued, and you'll serve the full 90 days. Judge Caprio looked at her seriously. "Ms. Ashford, I want you to use those 30 days to think very carefully about who you want to be, not who your father is, not what your last name can do for you. Who you are as a person when all that other stuff is stripped away." "Yes, Your Honor," Madison said, and this time it sounded genuine. "The community service at Rhode Island Hospital will begin after your release. You'll work alongside people like Mrs. Martinez. You'll see what nurses do. You'll see what emergency responders deal with when someone like you makes the choices you made." He paused. "And you'll learn, one way or another." "Thank you," Madison said softly. "Thank you for not giving up on me." Judge Caprio's expression softened slightly. "I haven't given up on you. But you need to stop giving up on yourself by taking the easy path. The path of least resistance. The path where Daddy's money fixes everything." He looked at her attorney. "Mr. Whitmore, make sure your client understands all the terms. We're adjourned." The gavel came down, but the story doesn't end there. Because 3 weeks later, something happened that nobody expected. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that redemption is possible, because what comes next is why this case became legendary. Madison Ashford reported to the adult correctional facility on that Monday morning at 8 a.m. Her father, Richard Ashford, showed up with her and tried one last time to make phone calls, to pull strings, to make this all go away. But Judge Caprio's ruling stood. The warden, a no-nonsense woman named Patricia Coleman, checked Madison in personally. "You're not special here," Warden Coleman told her. "You're inmate 847362. You'll follow rules. You'll respect staff and other inmates. You'll learn what accountability feels like." Madison spent those 30 days in a cell not much bigger than her walk-in closet at home. She wore an orange jumpsuit instead of designer labels. She ate institutional food instead of restaurant meals. She slept on a thin mattress and learned what it meant to have zero control over her own schedule, her own movements, her own life. On day 4, she had a breakdown, sobbing on her bunk, terrified and alone. Her cellmate, a woman named Denise, who was serving 6 months for repeated DUIs, sat with her. "First time's always hardest," Denise said. "You'll get through it." Quote, "I don't belong here," Madison whispered. "Neither do I," Denise said. "But we're here because we made choices. Own it. Learn from it. Don't waste it." Quote. Madison spent a lot of time thinking during those 30 days about who she'd been, about who she wanted to be, about Teresa Martinez and the words "I forgive you" that somehow hurt more than any anger could have. On day 15, she was allowed a visitor. She expected her father. Instead, her mother showed up, Caroline Ashford, who Madison had barely seen in years because her parents had divorced when she was 12, and her mother had moved to California. "Mom?" Madison stared at her through the plexiglass partition. "What are you doing here?" Quote, "Your father called me. He was angry. He wanted me to join his campaign to get you out early." Caroline Ashford picked up the phone slowly. "I told him no." Madison's face crumpled. "You too? Even you think I deserve this?" Quote, "I think you deserve a chance to become someone you're actually proud of," Caroline said quietly. "I left your father because he valued money and status over everything else. Over me. Over you. I was so afraid you'd turn out just like him." She pressed her palm against the glass. "This is your wake-up call, Madison. Don't waste it." Quote, "Drop a comment if you think hitting rock bottom is sometimes necessary for real change." Madison served all 30 days. No early release. No special treatment. When she walked out on a Wednesday morning in mid-April, her father was waiting with the car. but Madison asked him to take her somewhere else before going home. To Rhode Island Hospital. She showed up at the nurses' station on the 3rd floor and asked if Teresa Martinez was working. The nurse at the desk, a young woman named Kelly, looked Madison up and down with obvious recognition. The case had been all over local news. The video of Judge Caprio's sentencing had gone viral, with over 15 million views. "Why?" Kelly asked, her tone protective. "I need to see her, to talk to her." I don't know, I just need to." Kelly made a phone call. 5 minutes later, Teresa appeared. She was in scrubs, her hair pulled back, moving with slightly less stiffness than she had in the courtroom, but still carefully. She saw Madison and stopped. "Mrs. Martinez," Madison said, and her voice broke. "I'm so sorry. I know I said it in court, but I need to say it again. I'm so sorry." Teresa studied her for a long moment. "You served your time, quote, 30 days. I start community service here next week, but I couldn't wait. I needed to see you, to tell you," Madison struggled to find words, "to tell you that you were right about everything, and to thank you. Thank me, quote, for forgiving me even though I didn't deserve it, for seeing something in me that might be worth saving when I couldn't see it myself." Tears ran down Madison's face. "I'm going to prove you right. I'm going to become someone who stops instead of driving away." Teresa's expression softened. "Then you've already started." They talked for 20 minutes. Teresa told her about the cognitive therapy, the slow progress, the frustrating reality of her new limitations. Madison listened without checking her phone once, asking questions, really hearing the answers. When Madison finally left, Teresa watched her go with something like hope in her eyes. The community service started the following Monday. 100 hours in the ER. Madison showed up in appropriate clothes, her hair pulled back, no designer anything. She stocked supplies. She cleaned rooms. She held bags for vomiting patients and brought warm blankets to people in pain. She saw a car accident victim come in, a teenage boy who'd been texting while driving. She watched the trauma team work on him, saw the boy's mother collapse in the waiting room, heard the doctor deliver the news that her son would live but might never walk again. Madison threw up in the bathroom afterward. Then she went back to work. If you're inspired by genuine transformation, subscribe to this channel because real stories matter more than fiction ever could. At hour 47 of her community service, Madison was restocking a supply closet when she heard rapid footsteps and urgent voices. A code blew. A patient in cardiac arrest. The team rushing with the crash cart. She stood back against the wall, watching the organized chaos of people fighting for a stranger's life. And she saw Teresa there, calling out medication dosages, her hands steady even if her memory wasn't perfect anymore, because she'd spent decades building muscle memory and instinct. They saved the patient, an elderly man with grandchildren waiting in the lobby. When the team finally cleared out, Teresa leaned against the wall, exhausted but satisfied. She saw Madison watching. "That's what it's about," Teresa said. "Every single person matters. Every life has value. Every choice has consequences that ripple out further than you can see." "I get it now," Madison said. "I really do." "Good," Teresa said. "Now prove it." Quote, Madison completed her 100 hours. Then she asked to volunteer more. The hospital administrator, surprised but cautiously supportive, allowed it. Madison started coming in twice a week beyond her required hours. She worked hard. She was humble. She listened. Her father tried to convince her to go back to her old life, to her old friends, to the parties and the clubs, and the lifestyle that had defined her for 23 years. But Madison had seen something different now, something real. 6 months after her sentencing, Madison enrolled in nursing school. Her father laughed when she told him, "You're going to throw away your advantages to wipe up sick people?" Quote, "I'm going to use my advantages to help people instead of hurt them," Madison replied. "There's a difference." She wasn't sure he would ever understand, but she was okay with that. Comment below if you believe people can truly change. because this next part will prove it. 1 year after the accident, on Valentine's Day again, Madison showed up at the same intersection where everything had happened. She'd organized it with the city. Permission granted. A small memorial. She'd paid for a bench to be installed on the corner. A beautiful wooden bench with a brass plaque that read, "In honor of Teresa Martinez and all healthcare heroes, may we all remember to stop and help." Teresa came to the unveiling. So did her family. Her daughter Emma, now 17. Her son Marcus, 13. Her husband Jorge. They stood there on that cold February afternoon while Madison gave a speech to the small crowd that had gathered, including local media who'd been following the story. "A year ago, I almost killed someone at this intersection," Madison said, her voice clear and steady. "I was driving too fast. I was distracted. I was selfish. And when I hit Mrs. Martinez's car, I drove away because I was too scared to face what I'd done." Quote. She looked at Teresa. "But Mrs. Martinez taught me something that day in court. She showed me that strength isn't about never falling. It's about how you get back up. And mercy isn't about excusing bad behavior. It's about believing people can become better. I've spent this year trying to become better. I served jail time. I completed community service. I volunteered hundreds of additional hours at Rhode Island Hospital. I enrolled in nursing school because I want to spend my life helping people instead of hurting them." She paused. "But none of that matters if it's just about me feeling better about myself. Real change means changing the world around you too." Quote. Madison gestured to the bench. "This is a small thing. But I hope every person who sits here, who rests for a moment, who looks at this intersection, remembers that every choice matters, every life is precious, and we all have the power to stop instead of driving away." The small crowd applauded. Teresa hugged Madison, and this time it wasn't awkward or forced, it was real. Emma, Teresa's daughter, approached Madison afterward. "You inspired me," she said. "I want to be a nurse too, like my mom, like you're going to be." Madison started crying. "That's the best thing anyone has ever said to me." Judge Frank Caprio was watching all of this unfold from his chambers. Not physically, of course. But the video of the bench dedication went viral too. 10 million views in 3 days. News outlets picked it up. People who'd watched his original sentencing video now saw the aftermath. The transformation. He called Madison to his office 2 weeks later. She came immediately, nervous, respectful. "Sit down, Miss Ashford," Judge Caprio said, and his tone was warm now, grandfatherly. Madison sat. "I've been following your progress," he said. "The community service supervisor sent me glowing reports. The nursing school admissions office called me for a reference check, which I gladly provided, and I saw the bench dedication. Your Honor, I just wanted to—" He held up a hand. "I want you to understand something. When I sentenced you, I had 2 goals. First, accountability. You needed to face real consequences. Second, education. You needed to learn who you could become." He smiled slightly. "You've exceeded my expectations on both counts." "Thank you," Madison whispered. "But here's what I need you to remember. This isn't the end of your journey. It's the beginning. You'll face challenges. People will doubt you. Some will never forgive you. Your old life will call to you when things get hard." He looked at her seriously. "You'll have to make the choice to stop and help, over and over again for the rest of your life." "I will," Madison said. "I promise." "Good," Judge Caprio said, "because the world needs more people who choose to stop." Quote, "If you've made it this far in the video, you're the kind of person who believes in justice and redemption, so make sure you're subscribed because we share stories like this every week." 2 years after the accident, Madison Ashford graduated from nursing school. She passed her boards on the first try. She accepted a position at Rhode Island Hospital in the emergency department, the same ER where Teresa Martinez worked. They became friends, real friends. Teresa mentored Madison, teaching her not just the technical skills, but the emotional intelligence required to care for people at their most vulnerable. Madison learned to recognize pain in all its forms: physical, emotional, spiritual. She learned to sit with people in their worst moments and offer not just medical care, but human compassion. On Madison's first day as an official RN, Teresa pinned her badge on her scrubs. "Proud of you," Teresa said simply. "I wouldn't be here without you," Madison replied. "You would," Teresa said. "You just needed someone to believe you could be better. Judge Caprio believed it. I believed it. Now you believe it. That's all that matters." They worked side by side for 3 years. Madison became known for her exceptional patient care, her willingness to take the difficult cases, her ability to connect with people others had written off. She never forgot where she came from. She never let herself forget the person she'd been. And when nursing students came through for rotations, Madison always told them her story. All of it. The recklessness, the accident, the aftermath, the sentencing, the transformation. "I tell you this not because I'm proud of what I did," she would say, "but because I want you to understand that who you are today doesn't have to be who you are tomorrow. Every moment is a choice. Choose to stop. Choose to help. Choose to be someone you're proud of." Drop one final comment telling us what you learned from Madison's story, because your engagement helps us share these important messages with more people. Judge Frank Caprio retired from the bench at age 84 after 46 years of service. At his retirement party, attended by hundreds of people whose lives he'd touched, Madison Ashford gave a speech. "Your Honor," she began, and the room fell silent. "You probably don't remember, but 6 years ago you sentenced me to jail time for a crime I absolutely committed. I walked into your courtroom like I owned the world, and I walked out understanding I didn't even own myself." Quote. She looked around at the crowd. Judge Caprio could have thrown the book at me, could have made an example of me in the worst way. Instead, he made an example of me in the best way. He showed me that justice isn't about punishment for punishment's sake. It's about accountability that leads to growth. Because of you, I stopped running. Because of you, I faced what I'd done. Because of you, I became a nurse, and now I spend every day trying to heal people instead of hurt them. Madison's voice broke. Because of you, I learned to stop instead of driving away. Judge Caprio stood and hugged her, and there wasn't a dry eye in the room. The video of that speech went viral too. 20 million views, people sharing it with captions like, "This is what justice looks like," and "Faith in humanity restored," and "The judge who changed lives." But Judge Caprio never sought the attention. He gave an interview once, near the end of his career, where a reporter asked him about the Madison Ashford case. "Why did that one go viral?" the reporter asked. "You've shown compassion in hundreds of cases." "Because people needed to see both sides," Judge Caprio replied. "They needed to see that compassion doesn't mean letting people off the hook. It means believing they can be better while still holding them accountable." Madison needed real consequences, but she also needed someone to believe in her potential. Both things were true at the same time. Do you think she would have changed without the jail time? Quote. Judge Caprio considered this. "I think the jail time shocked her system, made her uncomfortable, stripped away all the insulation her privilege had provided. But the real change came from what she did after. The community service, the volunteering, the choice to become a nurse. Those were her decisions. I just opened the door. She's the one who walked through it." Quote, "Any regrets about the case?" Quote, "Only that it took Mrs. Martinez getting hurt for Madison to learn these lessons. I wish she could have learned them another way." He paused. "But we don't always get to choose how wisdom finds us. We only get to choose what we do with it once it arrives." Make sure you like this video and share it with anyone who needs to hear that transformation is possible, because stories like these remind us all that people are capable of profound change. Today, 8 years after the accident, Madison Ashford still works at Rhode Island Hospital. She's now a senior nurse in the ER, training new nurses herself. She still volunteers extra hours. She still tells her story to anyone who will listen. Teresa Martinez is semi-retired now, working part-time by choice, her cognitive issues stable but permanent. She still has word-finding difficulties sometimes. She still deals with chronic pain from the injuries. But she's alive, she's healing, and she's at peace with what happened because something good came from it. They still meet for coffee once a month. They still talk about their families, their work, their lives. They've become such close friends that when Emma, Teresa's daughter, graduated from nursing school herself 3 years ago, Madison was there in the audience cheering. "You've come full circle," Teresa told her later. "No," Madison said. "I've just learned that circles aren't closed loops, they're spirals. Every day is a chance to rise a little higher, be a little better, help a little more." Judge Caprio's courtroom is now a different courtroom with a different judge. But there's a plaque on the wall in the courthouse lobby that reads, "Justice with Compassion, the Legacy of Judge Frank Caprio." And underneath it, in smaller text, "Accountability and redemption are not opposites. They are partners in transformation." Madison walks past that plaque every time she visits the courthouse for safety training programs, where she speaks to traffic offenders about the real consequences of reckless driving. She tells her story over and over. And every time she sees someone in the audience start to cry, start to understand, start to change, that's the real viral moment, not the video, not the views, not the shares. The real viral moment is when one person's transformation inspires another's, when accountability leads to growth, when justice serves not just to punish, but to educate, when someone learns to stop instead of driving away. And that lesson, that single lesson, is worth more than all the designer handbags and luxury cars and country club memberships in the world. It's the lesson that who you are today doesn't have to be who you are tomorrow, that privilege is wasted if it's not used to help others, that every single person you meet has infinite value, that mercy and justice aren't opposites but partners. It's the lesson Madison Ashford learned in Judge Frank Caprio's courtroom on that Tuesday morning in March when she asked, "Do you know who I am?" and learned the answer was someone she didn't want to be anymore. If this story moved you, if it made you think about your own choices and consequences and opportunities for growth, then hit that subscribe button right now because we bring you stories that matter every single week. Real stories about real people facing real consequences and finding real redemption. And drop a comment answering this question. If you could go back and change one choice you made, what would it be and why? Because we all have our own versions of that intersection. We all have moments where we chose to keep driving or to stop and help. And we all have the power, right now, today, to choose differently. The Mercedes G-Wagon Madison was driving that night got totaled in the accident. The insurance paid out. Richard Ashford wanted to buy his daughter another one when she got her license back after the suspension. But Madison said no. Instead, she bought a used Honda Civic, the same model Teresa had been driving. She drives it carefully, defensively, never more than 5 miles over the speed limit. And every time she sees an accident on the side of the road, she pulls over, every single time, to check if anyone needs help, to call 911 if they haven't already, to wait with injured people until help arrives. Because that's what you do when you've learned to stop instead of driving away. That's what you do when you've been given a second chance and you're determined not to waste it. That's what you do when someone believed in you even when you didn't believe in yourself. You become the person who stops. You become the help you wish you'd been. You become someone who understands that every life is precious, every choice matters, and every day is an opportunity to be better than you were yesterday. And that, more than any viral video or news story or courtroom drama, is what makes this story worth telling. Because at the end of the day, we all want to believe that people can change, that redemption is real, that accountability doesn't have to mean destruction, that justice can be both firm and compassionate, that mistakes don't define us forever if we're willing to do the hard work of transformation. Madison Ashford proved all of that. Judge Frank Caprio created the space for it. Teresa Martinez showed the grace that made it possible. And now, 8 years later, hundreds of people are alive and healing because Madison Ashford became a nurse who stops instead of driving away. That's the legacy. That's the lesson. That's why Judge Caprio's reply went viral and stayed viral and will keep going viral for years to come. Not because he destroyed someone, but because he saved them. Not because he showed anger, but because he showed wisdom. Not because he gave up on Madison Ashford, but because he refused to let her give up on herself. Make sure you share this video with anyone who needs to hear it. Subscribe if you believe in second chances. Comment with your own story of transformation or redemption or learning to be better. Because these stories matter. These lessons matter. These moments of justice and accountability and compassion and growth, they matter more than almost anything else in a world that often feels like everyone is just driving away. Be the person who stops. Be the person who helps. Be the person who believes in transformation while still demanding accountability. Be the person Judge Caprio knew we could all be if we just had the courage to try. And remember, every single day that the question isn't, do you know who I am? The question is, do I know who I want to be? Quote, Madison Ashford answered that question. Now it's your turn.